First thing I'm going to do is grab my sketchbook, my ruler, and my pencil, and I'm going to start to draw guidelines. And so for this, I'm going to start measuring 2 inches up to give me a bottom guideline. So I'm just marking 2 inches across, and then I'm going to turn my ruler so that it's parallel with the bottom of the page there and draw a straight line connecting those dots. Then I need to decide how tall I want my letters. And so I'm thinking I'm going to go with 4 inches. So because I drew 2 inches up from the bottom, I'm now going to mark 6 inches, and that will give me the 4-inch height for my letters. So I'm going to do little dots at the 6 all the way across, and I'm going to connect those dots to get the top guideline for my letters. The next step I'm going to do, because when you're doing lettering, you want to make sure that it's centered, I'm going to actually give myself a center line. And so I'm going to measure my sketchbook page, and I'm going to find that my sketchbook page is about 11 inches, which means that if I want to find a center point, I'm going to measure in 5.5 inches. So I'm going to make a little mark at 5.5, come down a little bit and make a second mark so that I can make sure that I'm keeping my lines vertical. Turn my ruler, give myself that vertical line for my center point. Now, I'm going to write that word that I'm going to write in the box above it first to do a little planning. So I've decided to go with the word smile, which is a nice word to use because it's 5 letters, and so it's easy to pick the middle. It's going to be the I, and not only that, I is probably one of the easiest block letters to do. It's just simply 2 vertical lines there in the guide box. I've decided to go with 3/4 for my width, so I'm going to center those 3/4 right over that center line, turn my ruler so that it's vertical like that, and draw either side of the I. Now, the next step is to decide how much space between the letters, and I'm going to go with 1/4 inch. So I'm going to mark 1/4 inch on either side of the I, and then I'm going to draw a box on either side so that I know my other letters are going to go. I'm going to go with 2 inches and do that on both sides. Now I'm going to start to draw in that M. So I'm going to do 2 verticals that are 3/4 wide. The next step is to do the V part, or that kind of angle part. So first I'm going to measure halfway through. I'm going to go from the outside of one to the outside of the bottom, and then go from the inside to the outside, the inside to the outside. And what I get basically is 2 V's that when I get rid of my extra lines, I've got that M. Now I'm going to go over and do the L on the other side. Now that's nice and easy because you just need that vertical and then that horizontal line. So I'm going to measure 3/4 out, do the top part, then 3/4 up and do the bottom of the L. Now I'm going to move over and do the E. And once again, when it's got letters have straight lines like this, they're kind of nice and easy because you just do your measuring out of whatever width you chose and kind of do all your straight lines. It keeps it nice and easy. So I'm going to do the top part of the E, the bottom part of the E. Once again, always remember to measure out those 3/4. I'm going to find the midpoint of that middle and then center that middle part of the E right on that, still keeping that 3/4. And I'm going to cap off each of those arms of the E. Now the S is a little more complicated. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a box. So I'm measuring over 1/4 inch from the side. It's going to be a little bit bigger than 2 inches because I want to give myself a little extra space for the S. I'm going to create an O essentially in that box. So I'm going to measure 3/4 inch from each side, and it's going to kind of look like a squared off O. And so what that's going to do is going to give me guidelines. Then I'm going to kind of start to add curves to all those hard edges. So I'm going to soften up all the edges, and it's going to look a little more like an O now. And then I'm going to decide where the top and the bottom of the S end. And so I'm going to draw little horizontal lines to end the S. Then I'm going to create the diagonal for the S. So I do a little diagonal and then draw 3/4 on either, like to split the 3/4 on that. And then I'm going to start to kind of extend that line. I'm going to keep going back and forth and kind of measuring to keep my 3/4 where it should be. And I'm going to start to just round everything out little by little so that it starts to look a little more like an S. And that way I have a nice even S rather than trying to freehand it. Then after I've gotten that all set up, I'm going to go back through. I'm going to erase all the extra lines that I've got going on there in all my letters, getting rid of all the guidelines that I don't need. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to darken up the lines that I do want so it's clear where each letter is. Eventually, you're going to get hopefully something nice and clean looking like this. And you can use this process with any word.